This is the story of being a sniper during World War II. During the harsh time, a delay of 1 second could be the reason for your death. Yes, this is the story of Blackwatch. Before we start, welcome back to our channel. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do subscribe. If you like this video, please press the thumbs up button and also click the bell icon. The 1st Battalion of Canada's Blackwatch, the country's oldest Scottish Highland regiment, hadn't seen the sun in a week when it finally broke through a thin layer of cloud cover to bear down on their position at the base of Verrières Ridges. They soon discovered that its beams did little to ease the tenseness and gnawing fear. After a week-long baptism by fire, the 320 hallowed-eyed, filthy and dirty Highlanders that were left of the 4 damaged rifle companies huddled in a muddy, deserted beet field, waiting for the next move. They had blood splatters, plaster dust, mud, and ash all over their bulky wool wardress. The macabre dance they performed with the unholy trinity of scorching heat, furious combat, and waves of soul-crushing horror was witnessed by sweat-drenched armpits, groins, and necklines. The people suffering from the whims of crushing weariness accumulated over the previous 7 days sat dejected and stone-faced, gazing aimlessly. Others murmured prayers quietly or fondled rosary beads. Some considered exchanging near paralysis for death due to extreme exhaustion that distorted their judgment, depleted their vitality, and left them ragged. Beyond a curtain of green rose the northern slope of Verrières Ridge, now covered with thick, towering wheat growing shoulder high. It enhanced the long, gradual, and gentle slope up to the main line of German defense, which was hidden behind its crest by shimmering spectacularly in the wind. The results of the previous 4 grueling days and nights were visible behind the soldiers. Hill 61, a slight rise 900 meters behind, was covered in burned wheat, wrecked cars, and several abandoned slit trenches. The landscape was damaged and pitted from a continuous shell burst. The Blackwatch had made the hill their home, residing there while being open to enemy observation, enduring constant German sniper fire, and braving the thunder of rocket, mortar, and artillery shells that rained down in torrents of white-hot steel and high explosive. All this was done while fending off enemy patrols that used the Whitfield to cover to breach their lines both during the day and at night. Spiraling columns of smoke rose from the ghost-like remains of the connected settlements of St. Andre and St. Martin in the small valley at the base of Hill 61. They could see a few industrial structures off to their right. The 365-meter mine shaft dredged through Verrières Ridge to reach the iron resources below was unknown to the Canadians, who had incorrectly assumed it to be little more than a factory. German forces sought cover from Allied guns there. It required a heavy application of white phosphorus grenades and explosives stuffed into ventilation ducts and pit-head holes to push them aside. Now once shiny wall panels and siding stood charred and blackened, punctured by bullets and pockmarked by shrapnel. Guide ropes were severed, skips were set on fire, and trolleys were overturned. Doors and window frames were pulled off of their hinges and hung limply. German grenadiers lay slumped in hideous angles and waste piles and conveyor belts in nearly every nook, while others turned from power pylons atop the 9-meter-high tipple used to load the iron ore. The battalion was 4 hours off schedule for the closely timed corps plan known as Operating Spring due to a string of unpleasant surprises and deadly engagements with the Germans in St. Martin, which resulted in the death of their commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Cantley. No Canadian who began climbing the Verrières northern rise was aware that a veteran force about 3 times their size was waiting below the ridge. The Germans turned the town south of Caen, the capital of the Normans, into fortifications filled with anti-tank guns and automatic weaponry. The settlements were composed of fieldstone cottages surrounded by towering dirt mounds. Each hedgehog, as the defenders dubbed it, was a component of a defensive web supported by artillery, rockets, mortars, battle groups from elite SS and Army Panzer divisions, and other weapons. However, their first challenge was climbing the hill covered in wheat directly in front of them. They anticipated having a squadron of Canadian Sherman tanks in support as they had in previous operations that week, so they could pelt the target with cannon and machine gun fire. As the Canadians drew closer to the enemy's line, an entire regiment of field artillery would simultaneously fire a steel curtain of high explosive rounds 45 meters ahead that would creep toward the enemy. However, none of these essential components for success were there when H hour arrived. Major Philip Griffin, the acting commanding officer, 26, waved his right arm back after a brief pause under clear orders to go immediately and with pride and honor of the regiment on the line. He shouted, "Blackwatch, advance!" and the men all stood to attention. Even though they had a taste of battling in this kind of terrain earlier in the week, Verrières Ridge's maize-like crop was far more difficult. The Highlanders labored carefully up the sloping slope that had once been home to the troops of William the Conqueror and King Henry V, but now concealed a more nefarious horde by leaving suspicious trails in the grain. Prairie boys, longshoremen, and lumberjacks walked side by side with the wealthy and powerful while plodding diligently through the wheat. Men of all races, including Caucasians, African American, and Indigenous, moved side by side with Jews, Christians, capitalists, conservatives, and liberals. The men's unwavering commitment to principle, duty, camaraderie, and the unbreakable idea of regiment served as a testament to their unwavering faith and submission to authority. A screen of high explosive and white-hot shrapnel arrived 45 meters into the field, obliterating any thoughts of running away or retreating. German artillery observers stationed on the crescent height across the Orne River Valley quickly focused on the battalion's wireless sets, 3-meter whip antennas that were frantically waving above the weeds. The crackle of wireless traffic abruptly stopped as German mortar bombs hit their targets. The men of the Black Watch were isolated to the utmost degree because of the communications breakdown. Without any cover, the Highlanders bobbed and weaved through the chest-high grain, each guy hoping he wouldn't get the short end of the stick. The wheat, however, nearly eliminated command and control as they began to fall one by one. The cadence of the few soldiers who were still standing then abruptly increased. Soldiers felt an enhanced feeling of urgency because they had no chance of stopping, withdrawing, or showing pity. Keep moving, keep your composure. Man, keep moving, continue forward. Any anxiety that had developed in the lead-up to the attack was gone, and it was now being replaced by a scalding rush of adrenaline. When the Highlanders overran their defenses, any defender naive enough to accept surrender received no leniency because they were hidden beneath the grain. Just meters from the summit, German rocket and heavy artillery fire joined the choir, and a storm of steel and fire greeted the multitude fleeing through the wheat. With each blow, petrichor's typically pleasant aroma was mingled with the bleach-like odor of cordite, the charcoal-like aroma of singed flesh, and sulphurous odor of melted hair that had been picked up from the moist soil. The earth trembled with each step. Bodies and body parts flew in all directions, striking those who were still advancing up the ridge. The elite panzers and panzer grenadiers who opened fire at the point-blank range were the sole compensation for the valiant Highlanders who scaled the top. Screeches of the injured and dying could be heard from beneath the vegetation, pleading in vain for a doctor, a stretcher-bearer, or their moms. Cries quickly changed into whimpers and then, mercifully, into absolute silence. The Highlanders who were still standing continued to push through the fire and the carnage, drenched in sweat and wild-eye with wrath and dread. They were motivated by their acting commanding officers' continuous screams to push on, which soared over the din. Men, come on, move forward, we can't accomplish our goal. Only 20 of the 320 soldiers who assaulted Verrières Ridge that warm morning in late July 1944 reported working healthy the next day. When the Canadians eventually captured Verrières Ridge in the second week of August, the fate of the remaining soldiers came into clear focus weeks later. The Black Watch had 94% of its members killed, wounded, missing, or taken prisoner of war on July 25th. This number put them on a level with the Royal Newfoundland Regiment's 94% loss on the horrific first day of the Somme in 1916. Most of the 129 men who died in the assault are now interred in the cemetery of Bretteville-sur-Lez, located outside of Saintonge. After the massacre at Dieppe 2 years earlier, the day would go down as the second most expensive for the Canadian Army during the Second World War. This was how snipers lived during World War II, and there was no certainty that they would wake up the next day. What are your thoughts on the life of snipers? Let's know your thoughts in the comments section below. And also, don't forget to subscribe as well as like this video.